All right, friends, we're going to read the book today. It's called Buttons. And in the story Buttons, it's kind of a silly story. The man, the father in the story, he's got a little bit of a big belly. And when he's leaning back, his buttons pop off and they bounce into the fire and they get burned up. Well, he's so upset and distraught over this buttons being lost that he goes to bed. He is just so upset. Well, he has 3 daughters, and the 3 daughters, they promise that they're going to get buttons for their dad. And you're going to see one, they're all kind of silly, but let's go ahead and just read the story and see what you think. Buttons by Brock Cole. Once there was an old man who ate so much his britches, that's another word for pants that they used a long time ago, britches, his britches burst and his buttons popped off 1, 2, 3 into the fire. So this is like a wood-burning stove right here. And after those buttons popped off, they went right into that stove. "Wife, wife," he cried, "we are undone. My breeches have burst and my buttons are burnt, every one." His wife helped him to bed and then went to find their 3 daughters. "Children," she said, "a terrible thing has happened. Your father has burst his breeches and his buttons are burnt, front and back, every one. What are we to do?" The 3 girls rolled their eyes at the ceiling and thought and thought. The eldest, that means the oldest daughter, a slender beauty, spoke first. "I know not what course my sisters may choose." So she's basically saying, I don't know what my other 2 sisters are going to do, "but I shall dress in my finest clothes and walk up and down the palace bridge. Surely a rich man will fall in love with me and ask me to be his wife. But I will say no, I can never be yours, not unless you first give me all of your buttons." "An excellent plan," cried her mother. "Come to my arms, my precious child." Then the second daughter spoke up. She was tall and strong and had bright red cheeks. "Mother," she said, "I don't know what little sister will do, but I shall dress as a boy and join the army. Surely you have noticed what a soldier's uniform has many, many buttons. I have no doubt I shall be able to spare 2 or 3 for father." "What a splendid idea. Let me embrace you as well, my darling girl." Embrace is another word for hug. So she's going to give her, she thought that was such a wonderful idea. She wanted to give her a big hug. Then waited expectantly to hear what her youngest daughter might suggest. Well, this girl couldn't think of a thing. She was young and rabbity and still picked her nose when she thought no one was looking. How could she come up with a plan as wonderful as those of her 2 sisters? Still, she screwed up her eyes and twisted her fingers until they hurt. "I know what I shall do," she said finally. "I will run in the meadow along the river, and I will hold my apron out so that if any buttons should fall from the sky, I will catch them before they get lost in the tall grass." Now, I don't know about you, but I know buttons are not going to fall from the sky. This must be a very silly girl indeed. "Very good," said her mother, and gave her a pat. Privately, the old woman had her doubts, but since the older girls had such marvelous ideas, it hardly seemed to matter what the youngest did. And so the eldest daughter dressed up in her finest robe and jewels, and the second put on a boy's rough jacket and leather breeches, and the youngest left off her shoes and stockings to run in the meadows along the river. And now we shall hear what happened to them all. So we've got the oldest daughter who's dressing up in her finest clothes, and she's going to just walk back and forth until a man is supposed to fall in love with her. The second one's going to pretend to be a boy and join the army because uniforms have lots of buttons, and she's sure she can spare 1 or 2 buttons off of her uniform to give to her father. And the third girl, well, yeah, she had the idea just to run around holding out her apron so that buttons, when they fall from the sky, she's going to catch them before they get lost in the grass. The eldest daughter had not walked to and fro upon the bridge for 20 minutes when suddenly a band of ruffians, those are people that kind of want to try to steal your stuff and beat you up. Well, they tore her gown and stole her purse and tipped her over the balustrade so that she fell headfirst down into the river. So they stole her purse and pushed her off the bridge. It might have been all up with her. She might have died. But a handsome young bargee pulled her from the water just as she was about to drown. That's the person there in the boat. When he saw how beautiful she was, even with duckweed in her hair and her clothes all torn, he fell in love at once. "Will you be my wife?" he said. "I'm going on a long voyage through many countries to my home in Cologne, and must have you by my side or expire of a broken heart. Please say you'll be mine." "All right," said the eldest daughter. It seemed only decent under the circumstances. So she said yes. Now remember, she said she would refuse to marry somebody unless they were going to give her all of her buttons for her father. But I guess she was so distraught about being pushed off the bridge and into the water that she forgot all about that. She and the bargee were married at once by the captain of a passing sightseeing boat, and in no time at all were on their way down the river. The eldest daughter was very happy with her new husband, and it was only when they were in sight of Cologne's cathedral spires that she remembered that she had married him without demanding a single button. No, not even something niggly made of bone. "Oh, bother," she thought, "but what's done is done and can't be undone." She decided she would send her father a postcard instead. The second sister joined the army just as she had resolved, but no sooner had she put on her fine uniform with 60 gold buttons up and down the front, at the sleeves, and on her trousers and puttees, then there came a report that their country was besieged. Her country was at war, was being attacked. Her regiment was ordered to the front at once. So now they have to go fight the enemy. She didn't have time to take some of her buttons off to send to her father. What a battle there was! Cannons roared and sabers clashed. Musket shot hummed through the air like a million angry bees. Was it the brave young Insigne falling senseless from his home? Yes, it was. The second sister caught the Insigne in her strong arms and carried him to the safety of a nearby cowshed. He was wounded, a flesh wound only, but it bled profusely. It bled a lot. At once the girl tore off her jacket and made a bandage from her shirt tails. Many buttons were lost and destroyed in the process, but who could think of buttons at a time like this? When the young Insigne came to his senses, the first thing he saw was a golden-haired young woman bending over him, her eyes filled with concern. "What goddess is this," he thought, "that holds me in her arms? Surely I have died and gone to paradise. But no, it was only the second sister, who wept tears of joy to see him recovering. For her, too, it had been love at first sight. That night the young couple lay snug in the straw and made plans for their future together, as the sounds of battle faded further and further away. They talked of many silly things, babies and cottages and birds and nests, but not once did anyone mention Buttons. No, not once. I shall write to Papa, the girl said in the morning. A letter or something. In the meantime, the youngest sister went every day to the meadow by the river and ran to and fro in the long grass, her apron held out before her. So here you can see how she's holding out the apron, supposedly to catch the buttons if they were to fall from the sky. Running is good exercise, and soon his youngest daughter grew strong and sturdy, so she was not as unhappy as she might have been. For the truth is, not a single button fell into her apron. No, not even a cufflink. It was enough to discourage a saint, but still she got up every morning and did her best. For isn't it written somewhere that if at first you don't succeed, try again? There was no telling how long she might have gone on, but one day a young cowherd, who brought his beasts down to the water morning and night, stopped to watch her. At first he was merely puzzled by her antics, but then he grew to love the way her brown legs flashed through the green grass. He watched her every day for a week, and then on a Sunday evening plucked up his courage and called to her as she cantered by. So as she's running past, the cowherd said, "Hey, pray love, what are you doing running back and forth like that with your skirts a-flying and your apron all billowy?" The youngest sister was quite out of breath, and so was glad to stop and talk for a minute, and she told him of her task and how hard she was trying. "And how many buttons have you got so far?" asked the young cowherd. "Not one. Not even one of those cheap wooden ones off an old overcoat. I don't think there are any buttons up in the sky at all," she said, and sat down on a bank of crown vetch to cry a bit with her pretty brown feet stretched out before her. "Don't cry, love," said the young cowherd. "Listen to me. Tomorrow morning, why don't you try running underneath that old oak tree in the center of the meadow? I understand there's a frequent fall of buttons there." "Really?" said the youngest sister, hardly daring to hope. "Really, last week there was a veritable hailstorm of brass shirt studs, right beneath the place where the leaves are the thickest." Now, do you really think there was buttons that fell off that tree before, or fell out from underneath that tree? I wonder what he's planning. Well, he had such a way with words that the girl couldn't help but believe him. So the next morning she did as he had told her and ran round and round under the old oak. And what do you think? Just as she ran under the thickest cluster of leaves, down fell a set of used trouser buttons into her apron. So all this time she'd been running round and round, and now, after the young cowherd, the farmer, suggested that she run underneath the oak tree, lo and behold, there's buttons falling out. But did you notice what I noticed? Look up here in this tree. What do we see up here? That looks like someone's hand. Whose hand do you suppose that is? Who can describe the joy which greeted her when she returned home? Her mother sewed the buttons immediately onto her father's breeches, and the old man capered about like a child, so glad he was to be out of bed once more. And when their daughter told them of the young cowherd who had helped and advised her, what could they say? They said nothing would be too good for such a wise young man, which is exactly what the girl thought too. That evening, when he brought the beast to water, there she was sitting in the crown bench with a chain of daisies around her head. "Well, love, did you get your buttons?" he asked. "Yes, I did, and all because of you. How can I ever repay you?" The poor girl was willing to give him everything she possessed, but even that, she said, couldn't possibly be enough. "I don't know," said the cowherd. "Perhaps we should get married, for it is often said that between a husband and wife there can be no debt, but they must share all and all together." "Yes, you must be right. We should get married at once," said the girl, and they kissed rapturously. And here is a picture of their wedding party. There is the bride's father and mother. Doesn't he look proud with his buttons all done up? And look at that. The eldest sister has come back from Cologne for the occasion with her bargee husband. There they are with their new baby. Don't they look happy together? And there is the sister with the bold insignia. And aren't they a handsome couple? Well, they look strong enough to win a war all by themselves. See, there's the dad, looks very happy. And of course, no one is as beautiful as a bride. There's the youngest sister right here. And there she is, right in the middle of the picture. And the clever cowherd, well, he is a very good looking too. That's him next to her. You see him right here? With his trousers, his pants, tied up with a bit of string. See, he doesn't have any buttons on his pants. His pants are tied up with string. He doesn't seem to have enough buttons, but she doesn't care. It's a small fault and seems to run in the family. Did you guys figure out why the young cowherder, why he didn't have any buttons on his pants? Did you figure it out? When he told the youngest daughter to run underneath the tree, that was him up in the tree, and he'd taken the buttons off of his pants and dropped them down so she could catch them and give them to her father. I think that was pretty clever of him, since he had fallen in love with her when she was running back and forth in the meadow.